Good evening. Hello, you're watching the Policy Times evening show. My name is Akram, and with me, we have a very renowned and beautiful author Sahana Ahmed from Delhi. Sahana Ahmed is a fiction writer and poet based in Gurugram, uh, in the outskirts of Delhi. Her work has been featured in publications in India, UK, USA, Australia, Canada. Her debut novel, Combat Skirt, is a coming of age story set in an army girls' hostel in the city of Kolkata, city of joy, we call it, Calcutta, in the 90s. And today we are going to talk about how the life of a girl or how the childhood of a army's daughter and a lot of things. But before that, it's also a very unique day in the history of journalism as a number one journalist of the country, Sri Mr. Dr. Arnav Goswami, has been arrested by police today. And we as journalists are absolutely clueless whether it is absolutely not right when a free voice is being suppressed, but yes, it is a news, and journalists are still thinking what stand to take. But today, what we are going to talk is that author Shahana Ahmed's beautiful book, Combat Outskirt, is a love story, a journey of an army officer's daughter, and how she fell in love with a boy Adil, that we will hear from her. What we are, I'm actually curious to know more about is that the army life, the childhood life of an army officer's daughter, and the future of writing that we will talk. So, but before going into details of the subject and more about the intellectual stuff, I really want to welcome Shana ma'am and request her to kindly introduce, if ma'am, you can introduce yourself a bit in a couple of minutes.
Thank you so much, Akram. Good evening to everybody who's watching this. I'm very thankful to the Policy Times and to Quignog, my publisher, for giving me this platform to speak to and reach out to my readers. So my name is Sahana Ahmed. I'm a fiction writer and poet, as Akram has already said. I'm the author of Combat Skirts. And I write apart from the novel, I have written for many international literary magazines and publications. And let's just hear from you, Akram, what you want to ask me, because I don't know how really to introduce myself further.
Right. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was brief and enough. What I wanted to ask you, ma'am, that you have written a very nice book. I want to show the cover of this book, which is a very nice story. I want to know what was the inspiration behind writing the book like Combat Skirts, and how did you decide the name, man? The name seems pretty unique for a love story of an army officer's daughter. So, if you can describe your inspiration behind writing the book and how did you decide the
Okay,
name?
first of all, I would like to say that you actually gave out a spoiler. I do not want to say who Sabah falls in love with. So, anyway, I'll talk a little about my writing journey. So, in 2016, I decided to write full time. So, my first article was published in August 2016. And within a month, it's almost like the whole universe came together to fulfill my dreams. And I was given a book contract by Juggernaut Books. I had participated in the inaugural Juggernaut Love Story Contest. I had written a short story called Zina Taman is Not a Soldier. And it was, the story was set in a military special train. So, if you want me to, I can talk a little about special trains, what they are. But all the editors at Juggernaut, they saw potential in my storytelling skills. and they asked me if I would like to write a full novel with a similar setting, with the military as a backdrop. It had to be a love story, something that I had not really planned on writing. But then if somebody gives you a book offer like that, you don't say no. So in September 2016, I got the offer to write Combat Skirts. So in a nutshell, it's a coming of age story. More than a love story, I would say it's a coming of age story of uh, a girl called Sabah Minhas. It's set in an army girls' hostel in the Calcutta of the 90s. The story spans 1 year in the life of Sabah between Pokhran II and the Kargil War. So that's the book in a nutshell. And how I chose the name is a very, very long and interesting story. I did not really want to pick a generic romantic novel name, in the market, with no offense to anybody, but there are many, many books with names like I Will Always Love You or Love Forever. Or, I wanted to stand out in that crowd because my story, in my mind, it's not really just a romance. It's more the journey of a girl to find herself. So Combat Skirts, because combat gives you the idea of what the backdrop is, because it's set in an army girls hostel, and skirts because it's all about girls and fashion. So I wanted to have that playfulness reflected in the title of the book. So that's how Combat Skirts. I would like to give some credit to my sister here. We had a long discussion where, I asked her, what do you think? This is what I'm planning to write, and what do you think should be the title? And she just joked that, make it something crazy, like, how about something with skirts? And I will go and stand in front of India Gate and sell your book on a thela, and I will wear a white shirt and I'll have this and that. And she described her ensemble. And I'm like, wow, this is the title of my book. However, when I spoke to my commissioning editor at Juggernaut, she thought it was a crazy idea to have a name like Combat Skirts. So she was not convinced at all. But when I submitted my manuscript and she read the whole book, the feedback I got, the same feedback as I've received from my readers, is that we don't think the book could have been called anything else, because the skirts with combat prints play a huge role in the story.
Absolutely wonderful. I was going through the synopsis of the book, and when I was about to start, somewhere I was inquiring to read more and more. But unfortunately, it was I couldn't, like, this suspense that I found in the synopsis itself was very, very nice. Actually, I do not read much in this genre that you have written the books, but this is perhaps the first book which attracted me to read further. And I'm being really honest with this genre, because I discuss more of, I often like and discuss intellectual stuff, but the set of the book is quite filmy and quite, I think a movie would be more outstanding out of the book. A movie or a serial or something would be more outstanding than a book. Is it based on your, how much it is based on your real life, and how did you set this background actually?
Okay, here I would just like to mention that the screen adaptation rights of the book have recently been acquired by the Story Inc. So even they felt that yes, it's quite a filmy story. However, it's not a very typically filmy story. Um, I would say the writing is visual. That's the kind of feedback I have received. As far as how much of the book is inspired by my real life is concerned, I would say 40%, because the hostel that I have described in the book, Ava Hostel, Calcutta, it is completely true. I have chosen Calcutta as the city where the story is based. There are other places like Gangtok and Udhampur, but Calcutta is where most of the story is based. So I did my graduation from Calcutta, so that is a city I was very familiar with, and there's another reason why I chose Calcutta, but anyway. So I would say 40% of the book is inspired by uh, my life, and also I have woven in a lot of the events that happened in that era, like the Lakshmi Mittal wedding. His son got married in Calcutta, so that is a part of the book. And similarly, many real places, events, and in some cases, I have actually mentioned a couple of real people also. So just to create some authenticity with the storytelling, 40% would be my answer.
Excellent. I want to come back to the life of an army's daughter. So an army's, how is the childhood of an army daughter's army family's kids actually? How is it different from the normal childhood stories that we often hear and feel?
So, Akram, nowadays, if you see the generation that is growing up as army kids now, their lives are very different from mine or my generation who grew up in the 80s and 90s. So, my father was in the infantry, specifically the Sikh regiment. So, for some reason, he was posted very frequently to different places. So, I ended up studying in 11 schools, and I never completed one full session in one place. So you can imagine the kind of um, rootlessness I grew up with. So that was something typical to my generation. I think nowadays army families are choosing to stay in one place for the sake of their children's education. My parents chose to stay together, uh, except for the parts where my father was posted in a field station where families were not allowed. Then we would visit. So I ended up studying in 11 schools, and I'm not counting kindergarten or actually I started studying from grade 3. So that's the kind of childhood we used to have. And what it does is it teaches you a lot of it teaches you to adapt to new places, situations, people. That has been a big asset in my life, I would say. So my career choices, I studied hotel management, then I was into corporate training for a long time. And I would say my childhood as an army daughter was played a big part in who I became as a person, and even in my careers, different various careers. In fact, now that I'm a full-time writer, I credit my childhood for the book that I have written. I could not have written it had I not lived the life that I did.
Excellent. Ma'am, now I want to come to the very serious part of the, discussion, that writing, many people, even today, they want to make writing as their, commercially successful career path also, somewhere down the line. Now, with the rise of social media, we have often seen that while a lot of authors that I interact with, they are so passionate about writing and this thing, but not many books are very much commercially viable. Maybe with the rise of this social media, the value of content or writing is going down. So do you think the future is better for writers or worse, or the authors need to have a different direction or different strategy to be commercially successful writer?
Well, to be able to comment, I wish I were personally more successful or famous, or I don't know, many writers get into this thinking there'll be a lot of money and fame, which is not the case unless you're Ketan Bhagat or Ramesh or Twinkle Khanna. Um, so nowadays, what has happened is all writers, they want to become brands. You rightly said that this has something to do with social media. There are so many blogging platforms or just simply online platforms where you can post your work, whether it's poetry, fiction, non-fiction. It's become so easy there is, I would say in India, there are more writers than readers today. And I don't want to comment on the quality of writing, but definitely with social media, if you write something and you post it on Facebook or Instagram poetry is hugely popular. You post something and you immediately get likes from your friends and family. There's instant gratification. um, Somewhere I feel that that really stops you from really refining your work as a writer, because you are seeing success very easily. um, in most of my interactions with other writers, um, we usually discuss this, that it's better to send your work out into the real world, which means proper publications, journals, magazines, where you not just get uh, the satisfaction of having been published in a recognized platform, but you also get to learn a lot from the editors that you interact with. So personally, this is why, even though I have written a book and uh, I have uh, received good feedback for it, but I constantly keep submitting to literary magazines and journals because I want to never stop learning. There is so much good work happening worldwide. You need to be in that world. This such experimental, sharp, amazing work that is being created in the US, in the Caribbean. Uh, African writers are amazing. So you need to be exposed to that kind of writing also. Yes, keep writing for online platforms and social media, definitely, but also try and polish your work as much as possible. Keep learning.
Ma'am, a lot of youngsters, we have a lot of viewers who belong to or come from schools or colleges or universities pursuing education. A lot of educators are also connected with us. In fact, Policy Times is quite famous within the educators, as we want to influence educators into the policy domain, policy making, development, and journalism. If such youngsters want to make a career in writing, what kind of message or strategy or tips you will have for the youngsters to make how can they become a good writer, or how can they become commercially successful writers in today's age, like you?
Thank you for saying that. Um, the first part of the question is how to get into the field of writing. How to,
Right.
yes.
What are
So
the basic things that they have to keep in mind when they are writing something?
I think the first thing is having a love for words. Read
Hmm.
as much as possible. Read all kinds of genres. So, see, I have written a romantic novel, but I was not really a big reader of romance. I'm more of a non-fiction person. However, the techniques, the literary devices that I have learned from different books and different writers, they have all definitely contributed to the kind of writing that has gone into combat skirts. So, first thing is read as much as possible. Unfortunately, when I was growing up, I did not really have access to libraries and, in some cases, even good schools. Um, However, with today's generation, I have a 9-year-old who has been published as well in a US magazine. But I always tell her that you must read as much as possible. And nowadays, nobody has any excuse. You can read on a tablet, you can read on a PC, you can read anywhere, anything. I was the kind of child who even read the backs of shampoo bottles and receipts and bills, and I just loved to read. So I would say you must read a lot. And about the commerce part of being a writer, I think that people should not get into writing for the fame and money, because that's not going to happen easily. Um, do it for the love of writing. Having said that, in India, it's a great time to be a writer if you want to do commercial fiction, or even other genres. Even if you're writing biographies or investigative journalism, everything is being converted into web series and cinema. So I just read somewhere that Netflix has invested 3,000 crores in original content from India. So imagine the kind of possibility there is. So that is one market, one area that writers can definitely look into if they want to become successfully, commercially successful, and famous, hopefully.
Absolutely. I think one of the secrets of Chetan Bhagat's such commercial success is also because most of his films have been converted into nice commercial
Yes,
movies.
so he gets a lot of flack somehow from other writers, but I've always felt that he's an amazing storyteller. He understands what storytelling is, and he keeps his plots and his writing quite simple and accessible to the masses, and which is why he has become so successful. Also, he has been able to make a brand out of himself, which
Himself.
really definitely is needed in today's times. But he's a good storyteller that nobody should take away from him.
Ma'am, one more thing we have seen that recently all the youngsters who are coming to write books, they are preferring, or they often write books in English. And not many of the young authors are coming and writing in their regional languages, because many people from Bengal, they prefer writing book in English, or a Gujarati, or even from Odisha, from South. Everyone is coming to English now. Do you think the young authors can also promote, or can be should be encouraged to write in local languages?
Definitely, definitely. There's such a treasure trove of literature in our regional languages. Um, there is a big market for translation also.
Hmm.
I know a writer who wrote his first book in English, and it has been translated into 18 or so languages. And the reverse can also happen. If your content is good, there are so many examples of successful writers today who actually originally write in Malayalam or Tamil or Bengali or Gujarati. Um, I think you should write in the language that you are comfortable with. The language that you write in brings in so much richness, depth, and texture to the context of your book. Uh, I think publishers should support regional literature more, which they are doing, thankfully. More and more festivals should support such writers. And there are online platforms like pratilipi.com, which allow you to write in the language of your choice. And they have a huge user base. I think they have 25 million active users. So yes, there's a lot of writing happening in regional languages also, and it should be encouraged, definitely.
Ma'am, we were talking about your book. Any famous or quote favorite quote of yours, or from the book, or your favorite quotes that you like to share with our viewers?
Okay, from the book, I'll have to think. I think what comes to me right now is there's a line called all human beings have a default happiness setting. I had returned to mine. Uh, that's from my book. A favorite quote on writing from the top of my head. I remember a quote which is simple English is no one's mother tongue. You have to work for it. I unfortunately don't remember who said that, But there's another quote by Picasso which I love. It's not just for writers, but anybody who's involved in the creative fields. It's called. It goes. Uh, Learn the rules like a pro, so you can break them like an artist. So that's something I really believe in. I really believe in that.
Amazing. Ma'am, any other? So this book is already, Combat Skirts is already published and it's already available, I think, in Amazon and other platforms online. Any other thing? What are you working on? Any other book or project you are working on?
So my second book keeps changing. Sometimes it's a children's book because I want to write something for my daughter. It
Wow.
keeps changing. Right now, the project is a collection of short stories. Uh, like my first book, again, it's going to be experimental. I want to have fun while writing, so I'm quite an irreverent writer. I don't really follow rules as much, like I just shared the quote by Picasso. So it's going to be an experimental collection of short stories. This is what it is now. I don't know how it's going to change in the future. Apart from that, I keep writing for literary magazines. I have written mostly poetry this year. If you ask me, I am not comfortable calling myself a poet. But then, yes, I have written quite a bit of poetry, and mostly this year it has been dedicated to poetry.
Amazing. Can we hear one poem written by you?
I'm sorry,
You
I
have,
don't remember
do you
anything.
have something ready?
Um, I'll have to actually go and see. I am not one of those shyers who remember their poetry, but there's something I had written for a US punk magazine. They are into micro poetry. I hope
Yes.
I'm saying this right. I don't remember exactly what the lines were. It was called Lipstick Under My Burqa. And
Wow.
it, I just hope I don't mess this up. Uh, um,
Amazing. The
I am sorry. I'll have to look it up. I don't
title itself
remember the
is
poem.
wonderful, in fact. I think it must be very good. So, viewers, this was author Sahana Ahmed, who has written a book called Combat Skirts. Quite interesting and a very unique title of any book that we can think of, and that too when it is a beautiful love story in a very nice and compact manner. Ma'am, any last message for our viewers?
Um, Message would be we are all living through a pandemic, and I hope everybody stays safe, stays well. Uh, and I just hope that you keep reading good literature, and I hope you pick up combat skirts as well. And Akram, if you allow me, I would like to read out the poem that I was
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, ma'am.
mentioning
Please.
because I don't want to just go offline without having read it. Um, so the lines go: swine free, sin free, free of carmine and spirit, certified halal for the perfect pout on Muslim Tinder.
Wow, I was about to understand. Your stories are so short that the moment I want to understand it and actually learn a lot of it, uh, it goes over just like
And
your
I
synopsis.
like to write a lot of flash fiction as well for the same reason because I want the lines to have an impact and a life beyond just the lines that appear on the page. So I enjoy
Absolutely.
writing micro stories and micro poems.
Awesome, absolutely brilliant. I think the heading, the title also is extremely relevant, and to the. I think if you can describe and elaborate it further, maybe in future discussions that we will do, I'll be very much interested to have a detailed discussion on the title that you just mentioned. So, viewers, you are watching an interaction with author Sahana Ahmed, who has written a book, Combat Skirts. Beautiful book. Now, I think also republished by Quagnock. Now, three, four things that I want to summarize the discussion for you. Number one, reading is one of the best habits that our young generation youngsters should develop. and we are writing a lot of books, but the reading habit of Americans or Europeans are much higher than in India. If you travel in bus, metro, or public transport in the West, you will find people reading books. If you travel by metro or public transport in India, I mean 99% I have seen people watching movies in mobile or watching Facebook, WhatsApp, and all things. These things are not going to make much impact or difference constructively in our life. The second thing ma'am said, that writing habit depends on how much you read. So the more you read, that will make you a better writer. Making your writing habit or writing passion commercially successful also depends on a lot of marketing or branding things that you do, along with world class writing style or skills that you developed. Vocabulary is definitely one of areas that you have to work. There are a lot of opportunities in the translation also, because all the books have high potential to be translated in many regional or local languages. I think a lot of authors who really aspire to be publisher writers, translation can be your first step towards your writing journey. So thank you so much, Hana ma'am. Wonderful having you in the show and discussing a lot of areas. Viewers, keep